Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Ace Ventura, Pet Detective Jr., starring Josh Flitter, Emma Lockhart, Ann Cusack, Colin Douglas, and Art LaFleur, and directed by David Mickey Evans. Now, I didn't know anything about this movie, and I thought When Nature Calls was bad enough as it was. Let's see how worse this gets. Let's get into it. Ace Ventura Jr., played by Josh Flitter, tries to save all the small animals, like a mouse getting trapped in a mouse trap, for example, and ends up saving it and embarrasses his mother, Melissa, played by Ann Cusack, who's John Cusack's sister. And is that the same Melissa that was played by Courtney Cox in the first film? Because I have questions that unfortunately will never be answered. Ace Jr. is an animal lover as he's 12 and he's at school and has a crush on Laura Wilson, played by Emma Lockhart, and the school alligator named Mr. Chompers, and tries to find the as he tries to find the pets in the school. And this is like a repeat of the first film, but done much poorly. And Laura has a missing fish, and while investigating at Laura's house, and this kid does not have the range and the comedic timing by him as a totally grade school. Now, admittedly, he is a 12-year-old kid, and the humor is for smaller kids, not old enough to watch the original. A bad looking baby panda named Ting Tang is taken by some bad guys, and the next day, people blame Melissa for it as she goes to jail, and Ace Jr. has the hair due of his father, and she asks Ace Jr. to not do anything, which is a cliche, and Ace Jr. stays with Grandpa Ventura, who had a dog that's dead, and this is so inappropriate for a PG rating. For example, the dead dog, and Ace Jr. acts like a dog himself, and the rude humor, which is why the PG rating is existent in this movie. Grandpa Ventura tells the long story of the Ventura family of Ace Jr. to Ace Jr., I mean, and the acting is terrible in this thing. And it sounds like a cartoon, but more than the first two films, Ace Jr. finds a A plus, who's another kid at school, and asks for help and goes inside his hideout from bullies. And this kid reminded me of Mandark from Dexter's Laboratory, if anybody has remembered that show, which is a show I watched as a kid, but he's done worse than that character. Ace Jr. tries to interview a rich kid named Pennington Jr. and gets two advices that lead to Dr. Sickinger, played by Colin Douglas, until he gets thrown in water by the swimming team. And A Plus says the job Ace Jr. asks for includes the third person, and he invites Laura, and they go to a museum as they get get to the dinosaur section, and Ace Jr.'s dog Oxford takes a bone from the dinosaur section, and the museum crashes while Laura hacks into the computer system, while A Plus acts inappropriate by calling her his girlfriend. While Ace Jr. is chased by security guards and skates past them, which feels like a 12-year-old thing to do, and the movie is too silly for me to enjoy. Meanwhile, Ace Jr. goes to the courthouse and tries to free his mother, but unsuccessful, which is typical, I guess. And Russell Hollander, played by Art LaFleur, in a terrible role as the wannabe cop, which is a cliche, and I feel bad for Art LaFleur, as he's better in The Sandlot and The Replacements than in this thing. As Ace Jr. tries to bail out his mom with theories, and Ace Jr. gives up as Melissa tells Ace Jr. to be like his father, which Grandpa Ventura tells him is a pet detective, like his father, and starts dressing like his father. And the song in the credits from the original movie plays when he's introduced as a pet detective, and gets picked up by the swimming team again, and he calls for Oxford's help and pushes them in the water, which is so bad as a cliche. Ace Jr., A Plus, and Laura find Dr. Sickinger, who's crazy as a whatchamacallit, and goes to Russell, and he believes his mother is guilty, And they return the dinosaur bone and it collapses again. And they go to Dr. Sickinger. And he's the sickest character I've seen in any movie. And I'm grossed out and want out of this movie at this point, as it's so inappropriate. Even though for a PG rating, sure. They go to Universal Studios Orlando and sees a magic show, finds a horse named Calypso gone missing during the show, and gets chased by the crowd who wants the horse as Ace Jr. doesn't have it, which is so dumb. This movie is so stupid. They go to Pennington Jr.'s birthday party, which looks like a rich kid's typical birthday party, and Pennington Jr. and Sr. have a saying that goes like, what a Pennington wants, a Pennington gets, as Pennington Jr. is treated like a celebrity crush, and honestly, this kid is not that good looking, honestly. Ace Jr. and Laura sneak around Ace as Ace Jr. makes a mess in the Pennington house and find a hideout as Ace Jr. phones Russell and almost gets arrested, and Ace Jr., Laura, A Plus, and Dr. Sickinger lead the fake cops to animals that don't belong to the Penningtons, including the baby panda, and Pennington Sr. and Jr. are arrested, and Jr. goes to his room to secure as Ace Jr. finds the stolen pets and gets Laura's pet fish thrown in the alligator's mouth as Ace Jr. gets it out and slips out of Ace Jr.'s hand. And Sparky, the dead dog, I should rephrase that as, grabs the fake looking fish and gives everyone their pets back. And he confesses to Laura he has a crush on her. And this is school, and he is the school hero. It releases his mom from prison. These scenes are humiliating. And the climax is very cliche, as this whole movie ruined the Ace Ventura series, and I don't want any more after this. And there's rumors that there might be one, just rumors. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 1.1 out of 10. The worst in the series is it's very humiliating. This is grade school humor that Jim Carrey, I'm guessing, refused to come back. The acting is terrible and the writing is stupid, and this is a dumb movie aimed for kids that aren't old enough to watch the original. And if I were you, if this is the only one you saw, watch the first film. It's so much funnier than this. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this Ace Ventura series. And until rumor has it that there will be another one, then you could quote him.